So quiet. As soon as I get that recording button.
Yeah.
I need one of those.
Good day.
All right, 7 o'clock in your life.
All right, it's 7 o'clock. This is the May 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Common Council for the Oneonta. And I'll let you call roll.
Mayor Grant,
Here.
Councilmember Murphy,
Here.
Councilmember Davies,
Here.
Councilmember Roosberger,
Here.
Councilmember LaParche, here, Councilmember Carson,
Here.
Councilmember Harrington, Councilmember Rathke,
Here.
Councilmember Belvin.
Here.
Terrific. And Councilmember LaParche, if you lead us in the
Absolutely.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we have no public hearing scheduled. Do we have any petitioners? We have no petitioners, which brings us right to our first presentation, where we've got Vice President Karen McGrath from Harvard College to talk to us about the flight path.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you all of you. My name is Karen McGrath, and I serve as Hartwick's Senior Vice President for Enrollment and Student Success. And tonight is our way of bringing our new future-focused program called Flight Path to all of you. And so I hope that my overview will give you enough fodder to think about and also think about where the city can fit into our new initiative. So as you know, we are the private liberal arts college in this two-college town. And we are actually celebrating this year our 225th anniversary, which makes us one of the oldest colleges in the country. So what that should say to all of you is that we have very much sustained the test of time. And across our 225 years of proud tradition, we've had to reinvent ourselves as the world around us changed, as the needs of the community changed, as the needs of the nations changed. Now, for those of you who follow the landscapes, you probably know that the competition for college students is incredibly fierce in New York State. And when you couple that with the fact that there's a shrinking number of New York State high school graduates, and that decline is going to continue for the next so many years, that we needed to figure out how were we going to make sure we were still here for the next 225 years. But we also wanted to make sure that whatever we were creating was in congruence with our mission and our culture, and also how it fit into the broader Otsego County. So our president, Margaret Dragovich, who most of you know, and our board of trustees decided that it was really important that we partner with a thought leader, because we didn't want to make some kind of knee-jerk decisions. We really wanted to make decisions that were very much rooted and based in data. So with our thought partner, we conducted pre-pandemic an extensive research project using what we call simulated decision-making, where we surveyed tens of thousands of prospective students, our current students, but also students who started at Hartwick, but for whatever reason, didn't finish. And we wanted to gain insights into what did the market want, but also how could we embrace what our really deep and rich history is. We wanted to make sure that we could build up market demand, that we can increase our applications, have more new students, but also improve our persistence to graduation. Because as any college needs to make sure it's not who enrolls in the fall, you want to make sure you're retaining them for their 2, 3, or 4 years. But we also said to ourselves, we need to be honest with whatever the findings are. We needed to face whatever bold truths there were, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. And at the conclusion, Carrie, this didn't move. At the conclusion of the research really found there were 5 key elements of things that could do, in my world, we call move the enrollment needle. What we found through our research is that today's young people really need what we call more intensive, intrusive, and intentional mentorship. And the pandemic just really has exacerbated the need to have this 360-degree wraparound support. We also knew that all of our students said in the survey, they really wanted to be 21st century ready. That meant that they needed to know how to be agile, flexible professionals, not just for their first job, but their second job and their third job and throughout their career. They also were very clear that they're interested in having embedded career development over the course of their entire Hardwick experience, not just at the end when they're ready to go to graduate school or into the workplace. But they also are very clear they want to have this blend of their profession, but also maintain what they're also passionate about. So you can be a biology major, but have a love of music or art, and you still want to be surrounded by that and participate in it. But the part that I think is interesting for the city is that our students said they want to have a very vibrant campus life. And vibrant campus life, according to this research, is not just what do we do on campus. Students are very interested in how do you make connections when you leave the confines of our 425 acres. How can you have that lively town-gown relationship? How can there be more for the students to do so they feel that their life extends to the city or the town where their college is? And that's really important. So any of you who might have been at Hawkstown Fever that we had on Saturday know that it was this wonderful opportunity for townspeople, cities people, the colleges to be together on Main Street and have that sense of energy and sense of community where we brought everyone together. And so they want more of that from, again, the city, the town, and the college. But the research was also very interesting that said each one of these 5 things could move our enrollment needle, but the real power would come if we were able to find a way to integrate them all together into one. And so that has created what our new platform is called Flight Path. And what we really wanted to make sure with Flight Path, that it was something that every student had. It wasn't necessary for a student to lean in and say, well, maybe I want it. We want Flight Path to be Hardwick and Hardwick to be Flight Path. But we also knew it had to be authentic and it needed to be the real experience. It couldn't just be something we have on our website. Yes, we have a beautiful website with Flight Path all over it, but what was it? And we didn't want it to be this a la carte menu where they could pick and choose. Well, I like this part and I like this part. But we wanted to make sure they had this integrated system that would give them that wraparound support, making them 21st century ready, doing it within a very vibrant campus and preparing them for their next step of their career. So our board approved this very community-driven project in June of 2020. So I would say, think about this. Imagine finalizing your next strategic plan and doing and lifting it when the entire 100% of the campus minus facilities and campus safety were remote. The majority of the lift that we had to do to create Flight Path was during the pandemic. And so I think that because we've been able to lift it and do so much of Flight Path, I think it's really a testament to the strength of the Hardwick community and the community's commitment to Flight Path. So here we go. So working with mentors, and every student will have mentors, they each get to create what we call their own Flight Path. So they get to mold and shape their Hardwick experience to be what they need and what they want it to be. And the mentors are going to work with students to help them really articulate their career and their life goals. So when they graduate from Hardwick, we want to make sure that they have much more than a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science and XYZ on their resume. We want to ensure that they have a minimum of 8 to 10 documentable experiences that will show graduate schools and employers that they know how to apply what it is they've learned, but also that they are agile and adaptable, and that they really have some of these real experiences to pull from for this ever-changing world that we're living in. And if you think about how much has changed since March of 2020, imagine what these young people's lives are going to look like in the next decade. And we want to make sure that they are really ready. I know this might be hard to see, but we call this our place map. But you're probably saying, okay, how does this all work and what does it mean? And she's just up there, yip-yapping. But when a student first makes their commitment to Hardwick, so many of you know, May 1st is the National Commitment Day. And so each one of our new students is assigned and introduced to a personalized and dedicated, what we call guidance team. And over their 3 or 4 years at Hardwick, that guidance team consists of a success coach, which is kind of like a life coach, a faculty advisor, a career coach, and an alumni mentor. And students can add additional mentors along the way. So as they get more comfortable and know more people, they'll add peer mentors or other faculty mentors, community partners that they're working with or doing community service with, but also athletic coaches. And so the success coach, which is kind of like the principal of the guidance team, I guess you could say, they help them transition to the college, they connect them to resources, they challenge them, they support them, and the success coach will be with them throughout their journey. So the success coach is in many ways the continuity of care along a student's flight path. And so their experiences for our new students begin, we hold our orientation in late August, and we call it WIC Week. And during this time is when we're trying to get them acclimated to not just Hartwick, but also the city of Oneonta. And over the last several years, we've been trying to find more ways during that intense orientation period to make more connections with all of you. And so during this 5-day period of time, we're exposing them to the options and opportunities that are available to them, not just at Hartwick, but in the broader community. And during this week, so over the summer, they've met their success coach, and then in the fall, during this week, they're introduced to the second member of their guidance team, who we call their faculty advisor. And their faculty advisor, as Mark well knows, it's really to help them imagine all that's possible. And that's what we want. We want Flight Path to help students really expand their thoughts of their academics and what their professions may hold. And also in this first year, they have their first semester experience that we call their first year seminar. And this is where a group of students, a group of freshmen, have a shared common experience. And in this experience, we want them to get to know each other. There's a lot of exploration, a lot of discovery, again, not just about the college, but the surrounding area. And we want them to start building their individual flight path, and they actually start building their resume during this first semester. So think about it as that first year is the base building block of their flight path. During this time, we also administer to every student a strength finder, because particularly young people today, they don't have a lot of confidence in themselves. And so the strength finder that we use is to help a student identify their innate talents, merits, and abilities. So their success coach and their faculty advisor can actually build on their strengths to get them to where they want to go. Many of you know that Hartwick has a January term, and pre-pandemic, we had about 200 students each year who would go abroad, and the other students would remain on campus. But for our first year students, we've created this first year discovery trip during that J-term experience. And in this course, the students actually will be both on and off campus. And so we're hoping as we move through this pandemic to an endemic, we'll be able to take the students in further places. During this past January, they did a lot of things around the city and town of Oneonta. But some of the things that we're really trying to get at in that discovery trip are topics that range from government policy, art and culture, the role that technology plays in this ever-changing world that we live in. But then it's also, coupled with social things and fun things, because really what we're trying to do is get the student to develop a sense of affinity for this experience and doing it here in Oneonta. In the spring semester, we start really building on those 21st century skills, and we have these modules that are kind of sprinkled within the semester. But this is where we're trying to give them those soft skills that are rooted in the liberal arts of Hartwick. So it's things like, how do you have constructive dialogue with people who have diverse perspectives? Things like developing cultural and political fluency, understanding the limitations of science and technology, and certainly the idea of arts, because we live in a very artist-enriched area. And so these modules are really designed to kind of get the students to start really working on their critical thinking and pushing them outside their comfort zone, exposing them to things that they never even thought possible. And then during their second year, we add more. And this is the time when students are really kind of codifying, what clubs, what activities, what sports, what Greek life, what civic engagement, what are those things, the more fun things that they really are committing themselves to. But this is the year in which we really are introducing them much more to this concept of career exploration. All of our students need to declare a major by the time they're sophomores. And during the sophomore year, many of them will work with their faculty advisor to add in a minor or 2 minors or create a double major. And that's that flexible curriculum that the students told us that they wanted through our research. In the fall, though, we have something called the Success Summit, which is very much a sophomore conference. We're trying to give them like a sense of a professional conference. And during this, they're starting to learn the art of networking. They're starting to get exposed to different careers, inspiring alumni, so they can start figuring out how I chart my future. In the spring, and we just hosted this, we have what we call the Hawk, because remember we're the Hawks at Hartwick, the Hawk Career Hawk, which is an overnight program where we take groups of sophomores together to major cities around the country. So we just had almost 50 students just went to Washington, D.C., for example. And what they do is they go for like a 3-day experience, and they're hosted by alumni in those areas. So they're doing job shadowing, they're meeting professionals, and they're really starting to understand, if I have a degree in business, what are those things that I might be able to do? Or, oh, wait a minute, I'm in psychology, what are my options? And the idea of this is for them to kind of gain that insider insight and begin to make meaningful connections. So much of Hartwick is based on this idea of creating relationships. So by connecting them to our extensive alumni network as early as their sophomore year, they really start seeing themselves as being part of a broader fabric, and that's very, very important. So throughout the sophomore year, their guidance team also is helping them find other professional opportunities. And a lot of times it might be through their volunteer work that they're doing. So maybe some of them are volunteering at Catholic Charities, but somebody else may be doing a volunteer at the hospital, or they may be doing it at the soup kitchens. And the idea is to give them meaningful experiences. We know this generation of young people, the idea of giving back and service and philanthropy is very important. So we weave it in because they're not necessarily going to know how to maneuver and how to do that on their own. And during the junior year, we continue to add more experiences for our students, both inside and outside the classroom. And many members of the greater Oneonta community have served as internship sites and work sites for our students. And when we have the Great Innovation Center downtown, which we're very excited, it's going to bring more of our students right into the downtown area, working on their research and making further connections within the city. And so we guarantee within Flight Path that students will have a guaranteed work experience. It's very important because families want to know that when their student graduates, they're going to be employable. And so you got to have something on your resume. So again, Flight Path is about building those experiences. And we want them to feel confident and career ready. Some of our students are going to be very active in diving into their nursing clinicals all around the region. Other students are going to be very involved with their student teaching in all the area local schools. They may be working in a lab. They're going to have more internship experiences. But during this year is then each are given a dedicated career coach. So now their guidance team has 3 people on it already. And the idea of this career coach is to help them start thinking very critically about their future, working on their resume, doing interview prep, more job shadowing, helping that student apply what it is they're learning and trying things. So often students get out of school and they have a vision of what it's going to be like, and then they go, and that's not what I want. So our idea is to expose them to as many different experiences as we can. But we also, in this 3rd year, they're all connected with an alumni mentor. And this alumni mentor is a person who's volunteering their time to work with juniors and seniors in their field. So I may be an epidemiologist right now, but maybe I was a philosophy major at Hartwick, but my career has taken all of these turns. I may have students that are my mentees that are philosophy majors, or they just have an interest in epidemiology. So the idea is we do like a really strong matching about what you might be interested in and what my alumni profile looks like. And we want them to start imagining with their alumni mentor of what does life after Hartwick look like? What does it mean to really be a working professional? And we know today everybody is much more interested in a career where they have life-work balance. graduates. But those are lessons that you have to learn and perfect over time. But by having these mentors, they're going to be better prepared as we move into their next phase of life. But during this third year, we do something called the junior review. And it's really important. It's a process where they're working with their guidance team to make sure they're on track. You know, we don't want them to get to their last semester and it's like, oh, wait a minute, you can't graduate. So it's a very intentional thing. It isn't just about checking the boxes to say, yep, you met this requirement and this. It's also making sure they have their real world work experience, they've had their internships, that they're actively engaging with the campus community, both in clubs, organizations, sports, their academics, to have that well-diversified portfolio for when they graduate. Because we want to make sure that they can take advantage of everything their last year at Hartwick holds. And that brings us very much to their last year. And this is where their senior year is when their full guidance team, they have it all year, they have their success coach, they have their faculty advisor, they have their career coach, and they have their alumni mentor, and the other people that they picked up along the way to be part of their team. But during this time, this group of 4 is really supporting the students through what we call their SOAR capstone. And this is an opportunity for students to really be much more reflective. And it helps them frame the accomplishments that they've had and their experiences, because we're trying to make sure we're setting them up for postgraduate success. And so over their college career, we've been building their digital resume and digital portfolio all along the way. But one of the things about FlightPath is that every digital resume and digital portfolio will be tailored based on the student's specific academics. So what a physicist's materials look like may be very different from a music education. And so everything, again, highly personalized, highly tailored to what they want to do. And this guidance team wants to ensure that our students go confidently into their job interviews. That idea of gaining that personal and professional confidence at 21, it takes time to get there. So we're trying again along this flight path to set them up for that. We know all the research tells us that 93% of employers cite internships and that real world work experience as a qualifying factor for the vast majority of successful job candidates. And so I think for me, it tells me that the flight path experiences that we're creating with our students and this idea of a tailored resume and portfolio gives the Hartwick graduates a true differentiator when it's like, how do you go from that large pile of resumes to that short pile? I think flight path is an opportunity for that to happen for our students. And then of course they become members of our incredibly extensive alumni network. And then ultimately after graduation, they're alumni forever. They're forever connected to Hartwick and to the greater Oneonta community. And they're going to be part of this incredibly personal and professional network of folks. And so that is flight path in a very condensed way. So.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Vice President McGrath? Or comments? I have a question. Can you talk a little bit about this strength finder? We're very curious.
Yeah, so it doesn't take long, it takes about 15-20 minutes. And the student is asked a series of questions. There's no right or wrong answer. And what it does is that it's analyzed and students start seeing their strengths. So maybe one of their strengths is collaboration or a great communicator. It isn't about saying, oh, you will go into the field of criminal justice. It's more about their personal attributes. And what it does is they each get 4 words that really are key to what their strengths are. And then they can use that with their career coach or their success coach and try to figure out how do you capitalize on that. So we started it this past year and we're going to be building on it even more so. One of the things that I'm very curious in is to start doing the research of bundling students who have similar characteristics and figuring out how do you create experiences that join them together, because Carrie and I may seem similar, but our innate talents may be very different. So how do we join people together where there's commonality? And then where do we bring together people who have differences so they can learn to be much more amenable to people with different talents. Everybody plays a different role in a group. And so a lot of times, if you know your own strengths, you're able to contribute in much more meaningful ways.
That's terrific. Anybody, Len, I see you there as well. Is there anybody else that has a question or a comment for the Vice President? Yes.
I would just say that it sounds really great that you're focused on developing soft skills, and the overall sort of takeaway that I have of this approach is that there's a tremendous amount of support for students, which I think is great. I think those are both great things, and you're a great public speaker, so thank you. Yeah.
No, and I really appreciate being able to be here because again, when we launched it, we were in the middle of the pandemic. And I think that I've seen, and I've been at Hartwick 6 years, and of course 2 of those years with the pandemic, but the relationships that the college has been building strength with the city, I think is incredibly important, particularly in this new area of campus vibrancy, building bridges and finding ways for our students to be more involved with the community, for the community to be more involved with the college. And I think that's also really healthy for our students. And we know they want that. And so we want to be able to give that to them. So
Very healthy for the community as well. Do we have, go ahead. Oh, Len, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a current list of local employers that might have an opportunity to work with the juniors? I think it was in the junior year they go out and gain some workforce experience. Do you have a current list of local employers?
So our Director of Career Development, and I can get that information to Carrie, but if there are any kind of local opportunities for students to work or have internships, either paid or unpaid, we have an area within career development that we have a portal where we can post all of those opportunities for students. And we also push that information out to their families as well, because sometimes they need a little bit of a nudge.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And from my perspective, I really, I wanted you to speak. I appreciate very much your speaking. You're representing the college and providing us the information about the flight path. Specifically, as President Dragovich was describing it to me, the holistic vision of this and the integration of it into and with the city is extremely it has an awful lot of appeal. We are very much looking to see if we can't just recruit some alumni and some graduates to stay here or to move back here. So the integration of Flight Path into our community provides, I think, a tremendous number of opportunities to move forward.
I have several people that work for me that came to Hartwick, fell in love with the area, and have chosen to stay. I think it is, and the mayor's heard us say this before. I know for me, as a person who recruits quite a number of new employees, part of the issue is, of course, housing. It's very difficult for people to find housing locally that is at campus rental properties. And so I'm going to make my pitch to all of you that I think the idea of being able to create different living spaces and also, how do we continue to have the vibrancy downtown? I think that's very important as we're trying to keep students here as who are young graduates. We have to give them something else than the experience that they've had. And then as we're trying to attract, whether it's new faculty members or new professional staff members, it's really important to have that sense of energy. And I think we're getting it back, which is very exciting to see. So I'm really appreciative of the time with all of you, and thank you for what you're doing to keep the city moving forward. So better days ahead.
Thank you very much.
Yes, be well.
Which now brings us to a second presentation. Top that. Let me see.
It's actually going to build on what she said. Perfect.
So, Sandy, are you taking the lead or Mary Beth?
Mary Beth.
All right. Delaware Engineering and Matheson Public Affairs and Market Street Development.
So Carrie, how do we just do we make it go forward? Your right arrow. Okay, great. So good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Beth Bean, I'm a partner with Delaware Engineering, and with me tonight is Sandy Mathis from Mathis Public Affairs. And we're here to run through presentation of the work that we've been doing on the Market Street redevelopment. And when I saw the presentation that was ahead of us tonight, I didn't know what flight path was. But I'm actually really excited that we're following the Vice President's presentation, because this really dovetails really beautifully together with what we're going to talk about tonight regarding the redevelopment of Market Street. So let me get to, we have a little agenda here. I'm going to cut through background, methodology, and analysis pretty quickly. You all have a nice thick document in front of you that provides a lot of details in these areas. But the real heart of our discussion tonight will be the recommendations, and Sandy's going to cover that section of our presentation. Sandy's going to cover that section of our presentation, and there's a lot of really lovely ties back to some of the themes that Flight Path was just discussing in terms of connectedness of the community to the colleges and opportunities for recreation and engagement and employment. And then lastly, her last discussion regarding diversity of housing options and choices. So with that, so the background of Market Street, kind of how did we end up here? So you have some images there, and in the report, you'll see a whole bunch more. Broad Street was the main connection between Market and Main for many, many years. And it was a very active place with a lot of commerce and people and things happening. One of my favorite images is that image on the right that shows the view. This is standing on Broad Street with your back to the Oneon Hotel, looking straight down Broad Street at the train station, which was most recently Stella Luna's restaurant. This shows in really graphic detail, and by the way, check out the cars, very cool. Shows in graphic detail the connectedness, the vitality of this area. This section of the city was the economic engine of the city. There was a big focus on connecting the rail to the commerce to Main Street. Truly multimodal in a time when, that wasn't even a word. People didn't say multimodal, that wasn't a thing, but very much pedestrians and vehicles, and by the way, horse-drawn carriages and rail, all connected in one place. And then, unfortunately, this area of our city was a victim of urban renewal. And urban renewal in many major and small cities in New York State and elsewhere did not bring the promise that was hoped in terms of what it was intended to do. And in Oneonta, it unintentionally resulted in what planners call a super block. So it's a large area that's impenetrable, essentially. That has some land uses in it, but that's not connected to the neighborhoods around it, and loses that connection and vitality to the spaces that surround it. And our super block is now South Main. Folks know our offices over there, across to including Broad Water and Chestnut Street Extension. So it really kind of creates this big area that really cut off the pedestrian and vehicular flow through this area. In our world, it created this dead zones, a lot of asphalt, not a lot of activity. And then unfortunately for us, the centerpiece is our parking structure, which is aging in a not so graceful way. So what did we do here? Our methodology and what we were trying to achieve was Sandy and I work in a lot of small upstate New York cities. And one of the things that we saw in Oneonta that we don't see in a lot of the other small upstate New York cities is an opportunity where there's a lot of public land all in one place, and private land that is either underutilized or has a lot of potential that can be leveraged, all concentrated in one area. So that from a development perspective, really paves the way to a lot of creativity and a lot of opportunity. Pair that with the city's recent change in zoning code, which really, again, kind of feeds into this idea. We were very excited about this opportunity when we engaged in it a little over a year and a half ago, something along those lines. So the methodology we put together, we looked at what other small upstate New York cities are doing in this respect, and we said, you know, we need to do something a little different in Oneonta. And so we developed a target methodology that's really specific to the city. We started out by conducting a site evaluation of our area. You see on the map, all the different colors represent the different types of land base that we have available to us. Blue is public, the orange are privately owned sites, or whatever color you want to call that, brown, are the privately owned sites where the landowners are very interested in engagement with the development community. And the red are sites that seem to have a lot of opportunity, but that the property owners have not, been engaged in this process for one reason or another. We then developed this list of developers. We had, I believe, Sandy, over 110 developers on our list. They were all developers who were engaged in projects in upstate New York, small cities, this type of development and renewal. So it was not people from California. These are people who actually invest in upstate New York and have done so recently. Highly vetted list. We did a letter of interest solicitation. This was a marketing exercise, right? This was letting people be aware that this opportunity existed. Kind of dip your toe in the water. Some folks here and others who may be listening in were part of something we call the local development team. And we thought this was really important, and this is something that's very different than what's been done in a lot of other communities, where we engaged with members of the community who represented a broad cross-section of the community and different interests in the community, conducted meetings to find out what is happening. I mean, we can look at it from our perspective and say what's happening, but we really need to know boots on the ground. What do people think is happening? What are the opportunities? And importantly, what are things where the community might say, I'm not so sure that that's a good idea for us. So the development team, we conducted a series of meetings. We also worked with an architect on some redevelopment concepts and some lists of types of land uses that may be embraced by the community. We created performance metrics for the community to use to consider different options or thought processes regarding redevelopment. And we generated a pretty extensive resources library, which was an online resource library that loaded up a lot of documents. The city has a lot of really great information, but not all in one place. So we put it all in one place to make it easier for our developer community and those who are interested to find it. We then issued a request for proposals, very specifically asking the development community, in many communities, say a planning commission or an IDA or even a common council might create a plan and then put that plan out to the development community and say, respond to this. Essentially, give us a bid. Whoever's willing to spend the most money wins. And what we find in that process is that you're really taking all of the creativity and the knowledge about what products are marketable and successful in these communities out of the equation. So we didn't want to do that. So we put an RFP out and said, now that you know what this community is looking for, types of land uses and the performance metrics and those kinds of things, you tell us development, smart development people who do think this for a living, you tell us what you think we could potentially see here. The RFP went out in late October. We originally had a series of developer meetings that Sandy and I attended with a short list of, I think we had 5 or so developers, and we went to their offices and met with them and went through the opportunity in great detail. And that again was something that's different than the process that occurs in many communities. Where did that shortlist come up with? Well, it was folks who had engaged with us in the process, people who had asked questions or who wanted additional information or that we were aware were engaged in another similar community. One of the things that Sandy's going to go over is that the marketplace is flooded with these types of opportunities. And we watched that very carefully. And what we were seeing was there were very reputable, excellent developers who had submitted submitted responses or proposals to other small cities, upstate cities, Utica, Rome, pick one, and they had not been selected. So we knew those were entities who were out there with interest in development, so we pursued them and we talked to those folks. So Sandy and I did a number of meetings. They were all very satisfactory and very interesting and very engaged meetings. We then received responses to the RFP. Much to our, to a degree to our dismay, we received one response. However, having said that, if you're going to pick one response to get, we got an excellent response from a fabulous development partner, Bonaccio Construction from Saratoga. And I know a number of you have taken the opportunity to go on their website and look at their credentials, but they are a really well-engaged, reputable, extremely well-regarded company that does this type of small upstate New York redevelopment type projects. So while we were disappointed to only receive one response, if you're going to receive a response, you want to get it from sort of the top of the class, and that, in our opinion, is what we received. So from there, we worked on the report that you have in front of you and our recommendations. And Sandy's going to go into some detail about some other things that occurred in our process here. But really quick, I'm going to do the boring stuff because there's always got to be a boring part of these, which was the analysis. So in good news, this will not surprise you. From an infrastructure perspective, you guys are in excellent shape. And not all small upstate New York cities can say that. You have an excellent water system, you have an excellent sewer system, your drainage system, while everything always needs investment, is in really good shape. You are good with power, you're good with telecommunications, all of the things that, for this type and scale of investment, people can kind of check those boxes. Also, from an environmental perspective, you're in really good shape. No crazy permits are needed. It's sort of all pretty straightforward, which is really rare. There's usually a hurdle or an obstacle out there from either an infrastructure perspective or permitting perspective. Cleared the way for this project, which is really spectacular. But we did identify a number of hurdles to development that are both physical and locational. So I'm going to run through those really quickly. Some of these are kind of obvious. So from a physical perspective, the parking structure is an issue, right? Someone considering investing $30, $40, $50 million adjacent to a parking structure that does not have the most attractive appearance in the world and is maybe not the most functional is a physical determinant of whether or not we will get redevelopment interest here. That disconnection between the Clarion and Muller Plaza, we're all kind of aware, I think, that there's this iron fence and there's a locked gate and there's sort of not this connection there. That's really, it's a missed opportunity, right? But it's a physical barrier. 27 Market Street, which is what was the old Ford building. It's that kind of blue-gray building on the corner across the street from Foothills, is not in terrific shape. And the city is planning to demolish that structure and does have some grant funds towards doing that. But that's another physical representation of this area of the city that we find to be a hurdle to redevelopment. And then the lack of a lovely streetscape on Market Street. I mean, you go down there, again, we're kind of in that it's not a very great place to be as a human being. When you walk along Market Street, say from our office over to Foothills, or you just don't feel like you belong. If you're in a car, you're okay, but as a human being, it's just kind of not welcoming. So that lack of a streetscape is another physical hurdle to redevelopment. And then locational ones, and these may be the ones that, those are all pretty obvious to you probably, maybe the ones that maybe are not as obvious. So one of the things that we're looking for in a developer for redevelopment in the Market Street area is someone who is going to be tied to the community. So not someone who's going to come in and sort of perpetrate some building on us and take off. We want this to be, and we need this to be someone who is invested in our community. And for these types of developers, not unlike Ken Carney, who we know you're familiar with, obviously, for the project he's doing here, and also Bonaccio and others, they build their structures and then they operate them and maintain them over the long haul. That's a good thing for us as a community. It ensures the quality of the project. However, it presents a challenge for these developers when we're in Oneon and we always say we're halfway between Binghamton and Albany. We are, but that also means we don't have a center of gravity for a staff of people who would, and these are professionals who come and operate and maintain and manage these facilities. So that's a locational inhibitor. Our location, which we love, but it is kind of disconnected from a lot of other big things. So that's one of our factors. Sandy's going to talk a little bit about the flood of similar opportunities. I believe we were told there were at least 30 similar RFPs on the street when ours was on the street. That's a lot. And it's even though we said there's 110 developers, many of them partner with each other. So that was a lot of opportunities. Everybody wants to do this. And for good reason. It's a successful model. Weak economic diversity, so we have the colleges and we have kind of our summer and we have the hospital and we have these different things, but they've not been gathered together and sort of leveraged as being regional assets, but all seen very disparately. And that's something that I think to bring together the economic diversity we have to show and demonstrate that there is a demand for new housing types, for recreation for adults, as opposed to kids, that kind of thing. So we need to strengthen that, right? That's one of our weaknesses. And then again, that leverage, right? We were just talking about this. Many of Sandy interviewed a number of our major employers, probably a dozen or so. And we found that there were a lot of similar demands from them, but that we haven't gathered them together in a basket and said, okay, we're all part of this economic area that goes beyond the city and town of Oneonta out into the Cooperstown area, out even further. And how do we gather that and leverage it then to show that there's a demand for the type of redevelopment that we're looking for, and that the city is the right centerpiece for that demand. So with that, I'm going to turn our discussion over to Sandy. He's really going to get into the heart of the recommendation that we have, and really great day that we had in the city here back. Nick?
I'm going to apologize in advance for my dynamic voice today. So I'll do my best to emphasize points here.
I can advance your slides for you.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. What you're seeing here with the slides is really was done by end of February. That's when the report was done. And what we decided to do in partnership with the mayor and Councilmember Carson is there was such a momentum with Bonaccio. And Mayor Beth was correct. I was disappointed. I thought we would have more. We'll get into a little later here why. But if I could have picked one, at the end of the game, it would have been Bonaccio. In fact, I had said that to Mary Beth, because I live just south of that. No, Mary Beth lives even more south of that, or closer south. But he's such a dynamic developer that I thought could really fit in with the culture here in the city of Oneonta, not only architecturally, but theme-wise, uses, and they're so respected in the community. And when you invite the scale development that he would like to do, and I believe this city would welcome once that's vetted, there's no one, I think, in the development community, certainly anywhere near me, that I would trust for that. So So what we decided to do is, why don't we get Bonaccio into the city? Why don't we bring his team here? Mary Beth and I had gone and met with him and his team in Saratoga as part of the process, maps and everything, and that process was all about, we were salespeople, that's what we were. And we were just promoting the city, the people, the educate, everything, you know, because we both really love the communities. So that's what we did. So we got them to the point that we left, they were open to continuing discussion. That was always their goal. We just keep talking to us, please, return our emails. So what we did is let's get Bonaccio here in the city. The top developer, Rich Rosen, had not been to the city. We put together a day, working very closely with your economic development committee, as well as the mayor, the business community, and we identified other key folks like college presidents, Jeff Joyner from the hospital on the IDA, to really bring it in. How I would describe it is, there was not going to be an argument at that table. There was not going to be a disagreement at that table. Nobody's going to talk about, oh, I don't think that's possible. It was a big, warm hug. That's what we were doing. We were bringing them into this community to show them the level of cooperation, collaboration, enthusiasm to bring that developer here. Developers have choices. They're not lined up at your exit, but they're not lined up at most exits. And as Mary Beth said, there were over 30 that Bonaccio told us of other RFPs they had to choose from. How do you stand out in that? That was the effort to do. So that was extremely successful in my mind. I'm sure you've heard about it from the mayor and Len and others. They left very happy. They started sharing significant numbers that they felt the types of development. It was a very frank discussion of honesty with the groups. So I think they left in the perfect place. They asked for 2 to 3 months to kind of clean up where they are and then to re-engage. So that was good. So there were some things I'm going to talk about very quickly that are not really relevant because we've passed that already. But I will highlight those that as you continue the process. And in my mind, it's the cultivation of a real trusted relationship and partnership with the Bonaccio folks. Because there's going to be some differences of opinion, but common people with common interests, what's best for the city, can achieve something really spectacular. And I think the moves have lined up for that to happen in the city. To see the level of, in my opinion, well over $100 million investment in your city by the private sector over the next 5 years, in my opinion. That's what's before you now. So keep the warm hug in your mind at all times. I can't read that, it's so far away, so I'm going to just read this. So the solutions to physical in neighbors. So yeah, the parking garage. In my mind, you got to get the project done now. We've explored it. You got a budget, stay within the budget, make it look better, and there'll be another day that something more long-term will have to be done there. But you need to clean up. It's important for the development down there. Or you can chase additional money if you want and try to do that. But in my mind, you have enough money. We brainstormed with Greg a couple of times. And we actually talked to the developer about what are some of the things we could do within that budget. You know, no county tax dollars. What's the budget for the state? And can you make it look attractive and functional? And the answer is yes. So that's got to get done. Outreach to the Clarion owner regarding the gate access issues. That reach out's even more important than those two issues. It's what's going to happen with that building. What are the future uses? Is that owner going to come in and invest? Are they going to pay their taxes? You know, what do you have there? Because that could be another albatross on this city if you're not careful. And the Bonaccio people were surprisingly interested in maybe being the solution on that. So we kind of welcomed that, we talked about that. And again, that becomes private sector to private sector. You want to encourage the private sector to come in here and invest. Your public dollars are the incentive to help the real dollars come in. So hopefully Bonaccio can reach an agreement. But if not, this council needs to be prepared to do what you need to do to protect the city from that property going into a really bad way. But that's a discussion that you have with your development partner that you trust to move forward in this thing. 27 Market. It's got to be addressed somehow. It's gone through several concepts, but I have to tell you, I've always thought even from the day I was here with the IDA, the 27 Market solution. I'm sorry.
Chestnut Street.
Chestnut. In the future of Chestnut, whether that becomes pedestrian only, is it part of a really cool pedestrian flow, whatever the new vision could be there. First off, the development partners got to be on your right side. Now you've got somebody to work with that can bring the dollars. You aren't doing that in the vacuum. But I think 27 somehow is connected to that parking structure somehow. I don't know how to do 27 Market isolated. I think that concept's got to be more broadly discussed by whoever advances that, but that's the time to take that. I think the parking garage being looked in an isolated way is, I think, can distract, because the structure of Chestnut and how the demolition of 27 Market and how that happens, all has to be decided, because that street may not be there when you knock down 27 Market. So you need to have a vision ready to go. Improve Market streetscape. Again, we were torturous to Greg and the team that we don't think you should do the streetscape without your private sector partners. You want them at the table because they're going to decide, because they have an interest, Bonaccio has an interest in Stella. Clarity is something you're intrigued by. They have they're interested in a lot between Stella Luna and Foothills. So they need to be a partner at the table, but you have the money, the state money, to do that project. It's really the vision, what it looks like, and collaborate with your community and your development partner to figure out, well, how is that best redevelop the streetscape in partnership and connections with these projects and these sites. So you have the money, it's just bringing that team together in advance. Solutions to locational. Convene major employers in the region, collect data, common needs, establish an economic development. Well, the housing demand, just heard, is a key factor that's coming out of this. So, but terminus for Bonaccio was those earlier meetings with the presidents, with Jeff Joyner, talking to them about their housing needs for their existing employees. So when we connected, we offered it to all the developers that were engaged with it at the time. Bonaccio was the only one that took advantage of it. They called each president, and they were connected to the HR departments to get the data from who works for them and what kind of housing do they want and would they move to the city and what's that look like. So it was the two college presidents. Jeff Joyner did a great job connecting to not only Fox but Bassett. New York Central Mutual was very cooperative and Courtney. So those entities, Bonaccio talked to them, and they left those discussions with an extreme confidence of the need for quality market housing of different types: rental, purchase, condos, you name it, whatever it is. But in the city core, with pedestrian connections, with a flow that includes Main Street, Market Street, flowing as one. So that's what turned, and that's what Bonaccio's embracing. Economic incentives factor. So as part of our day with the developers, I run a couple IDAs. In green, we did many pilot agreements. The city has several incentives to help developers. That is not a dirty word, folks. You do what you need to do to get private investment. You know, it's not a sin to make money. You hope they make money because that's good things for the city. So we brought the IDA to the table. The chair and vice chair, Jeff Joyner and Rowley, Mr. Rowley. And what the message was at that table was, we are prepared to consider anything. And Len was at the table, and the mayor. There was no details of what the tax breaks. You tell us what you need that can provide that level of incentive you're talking about in the next 5 years. We will look at it, we'll consider it, and if it's, and we'll do what's best for the city in this partnership. So you have to have that openness, that willingness to do what you need to do. last year. So that would be part of the discussion. But someone that's from a rural community, we couldn't get an ounce of private investment if we weren't aggressive in helping them get to that point. So be open-minded. That's part of a much broader discussion that's coming up. We include the city and IDA in that discussion. They welcomed just the openness that they would consider. So that was very positive. And then, of course, to drive support for regional amenities. So, and that's when you develop partner again. What that really means to me is there's a lot of money out there that's not just for development. It's for all the community stuff that enhances development. And in my mind, if a community has development, whether it's parks, whether it's recreation, whether it's art, whether it's a creative community, whatever it is, those public dollars can support that community. Not only that enhances its attractiveness to development, but also for your citizens as well. Development brings a lot of things to your community: quality housing, tax revenue, but there's other things that should be able to attract that enhances the quality of life. And that's what that means to me, is that bringing all those in and chasing CFAs that are just for the city to enhance things. But again, you develop a partner, should, because it's in their best interest to be successful at that. They should be at the table helping with that. In fact, oftentimes I might pay for matches and grant writers, and I wouldn't be shy to ask those things. Developer partnership on this next round of all this federal money and state money. I've never seen this, and I've been around, as you see. I got gray hair and to be able to talk. I have never seen this public money that is out there right now. Now is the time to chase it, enhanced infrastructure, cool streetscapes, everything quality of life, enhancing transportation. But I love the creative stuff. Get your creative economy, whether it's murals, whether it's public artwork, whether it's those partnerships are critical for a city like this. So in my mind, there's tons of money. You should be chasing that. And with the developer and the private money, you rank higher and you will be successful. But don't forget, you got all these things for the city as well. Secret and pre-permitted. So the next step in my mind, when we talk to the financial folks, is they need to start coming with a vision. What are you talking about? What's it look like? Certainly the first projects they want to do is a substantial, in the neighborhood of between 30 and 40 million housing project, market housing. What's that look like? Where sites are you talking about? Does that include the plan? So you folks need to get some details. What's that mean? Right? And then there needs to be as advanced approvals as you can with your new zoning. Because what you want to do is you want to eliminate the uncertainty, and you want to secure as quickly as you can predictability on time frame. So once they give you details, my recommendation is you want to really engage as soon as you can with your planning board and your planning folks to get things approved. You don't need to know everything. Set certain state. I've done generics all the time in business parks, corridors. It works, but the more detail I give you, the better. But you want to get these things approved. In my mind, I do a 5-year plan and approve the whole thing. Make it easy for them just to do the first project, the next project. But the approvals will lock it into the quality that this city demands and deserves. So, gotta do the last piece. So, I can't say partnership enough to engage the developer, because you shouldn't join it, but Schenectady, I'll give you a Schenectady. 15 years ago, you would walk on the street in the daytime. It was a city that was not only dead, it was most impossible to bring back. Great economic developer regularly shows up. They create a structure called the Metroplex, which provides a sharing of sales tax dollars for investment. And they engage in a preferred developer agreement in partnership with the Gillespie Group. Who's based there? No one else was there. No one else wanted to do the development. And in my mind, when Acio's here, he wants to do the development. People have had 3, 4 years, 10 years, 20 years that partnership is real and there is nothing wrong with it. It's exactly how cities and communities are turned around and investment is made. So Schenectady is a prime example of it. Now, that's attracted other outside investment now, but the hardest stuff happens with a true partner. So in my mind, but not just the recommendation is, the mindset's gotta be that the trusted partnership. And that's gotta go both ways. Once you could really feel that, the magic can really happen. So think big picture, and that's with your development. Leadership is key, and this is what the city. And I would say you really need, and I know Glenn's gonna be involved. The city's gotta have someone, some group, whatever it is, driving this with the private developer. Folks, this is not a negotiation by city council. That's not how this works. The city council will approve, should react. Your traditional government, and I've sat on the county legislature in a town, so I get it. But there's gotta be a concept and ideas and the vision that is fleshed out with a lot of detail. And that's when you bring it into the full partnership. So the leadership of the city in doing that, Mayor, as you know, we've talked about it, is critical. And I have great confidence in your mayor to be helping drive that as well. Letters community partnerships. Mayor Beth touched on it. It's, the college, everybody should be doing more. The colleges should be doing more. Your medical community should be doing more. Put them on the spot. And, demand more from them. Demand more from your private business community. As they see the momentum and what could happen, because this investment helps everybody, right? The colleges show better. Admissions will be better. Everybody benefits. The more people come here and spend money, everybody benefits. So as you do that, the demand and expect more from everyone becomes reasonable. And you'll see that there'll be a cooperative, positive attitude. Again, and you just don't want to wet blanket the table. It's distracting. Everything is possible and doable. You may have to negotiate, you may have to massage it, but never say no. Because if you say no, remember, there's a long line waiting for Bonacci to show up with their community. And you just can't get that. No obstacles too big to overcome. It really never is. Well, with competition, but appropriate. So when I talk about this, the more developers, the better. Come on in. But your standards should not change. Your expectations should not change. Because this city has a bar, in my opinion, of great respect and pride. You're only enhancing that. So you don't settle for the poor developer, only the good ones are welcome. And then honest communications. Nothing gets us off the rails quicker when information is not shared. And people find out that things are happening that they aren't comfortable. You have to be upfront with the public, with government, with your partners. This is what we're doing. This is our vision. This is where we're headed. Everybody, let's move in one direction. So it was a great project. I wish we had 20 developers lined up for you, but at the end here, you have one that could be fantastic. They're ready. You guys are ready. We wish you the best to advance that partnership.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Mary Beth. And let me take questions or comments for the two. Do we have questions or comments? Well, I got to tell you personally, there's no doubt that you stepped up to the plate and swung hard, and Bonacio could very well be a home run. So I appreciate very much the effort.
Well,
And
the
documentation and the advice as we move forward. If there are no questions and no comments, I'll thank you guys very much.
Mark, I'm sorry, Mayor, sorry, I have one statement. Just about the honest communications, I fully agree. I think I can probably speak to the council, but I would say that most of this information is brand new. We have not heard. And I think we need to have better communication moving forward on some of this information. And not wait for 4 months, 5 months to get some of it. So.
Any other comments? Okay, well, thank you again, very much.
Thank you.
And with that, we will go to our boards and commission reports. Our Commission on Community Relations and Human Rights meeting was canceled, so we'll go to Parks and Recreation with Councilmember Shu.
Oh, no, so I was not in attendance last night and I had a chance to watch the meeting, so I'd like to postpone my report until the next meeting if that's possible.
That sounds more than possible. We have, through the magic of the internet, Glenn Carson from 2/3 of the way across the country. And Glenn, I wonder if you might be able to give us the Finance and Human Resources Committee report.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually going to defer to Councilmember Harrington.
We met on it was April 25th. I'm sorry, the dates are all wrong. We met on April 25th at 6 o'clock. We talked about the YMCA contract for both Boulder Pool and the morning program, which I believe both of them are on this motion. I would like to thank the Y again for being a good with the city partner with the city on this. So I'm hoping that you guys will go with us on the recommendation of passing this. Dave Hotelling and Ginny were here to talk about the OPT group on that Route 6. The county, if I get this wrong, please jump in one of it. The county is going to suspend billing on that group for payment, but we're still going to be reimbursed by the county. So we're not going to lose anything. It's just that it was brought up to us so that we know. I think there's got to be an amendment or agreement to the contract. So I really, that's in front of us as well. The number 11 motion about the CSA contract, we're gonna leave that until we get ready to discuss that. I'm not sure if that's gotta go to executive session, but I'm gonna leave it up to Greg when we get closer to discuss that about the 10-hour shifts. There's a couple other motions in front of you for the mayor to sign. We went over our budget transfers, which I think they sent everything to you, and we went over a materials list for purchasing, which is an extensive list. So I hope you all had a chance to look over that.
Any questions, comments for Scott? Okay, thank you very much, Scott.
One other thing, I think this is good news that Jenny brought up that's not here, but 60% of our water has been paid and about 59% of our sewer has been paid and collected. So that's good news. I want to make sure that.
Very good. Thank you, Scott. And we'll move on now to the city administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Employment opportunities, we're currently accepting applications for part-time bus drivers, part-time civilian dispatcher in the police department, a full-time member on our streets crew in DPW. We have qualifications that be a heavy equipment operator, maintenance worker, full-time accountant in our finance office, as well as a seasonal part-time labor partner in DPW. The Newell Park Paved Pathway Project, which is one of our ARPA-funded projects, also receiving some funding from the Future Permanent Foundation. That bid package was advertised today. It was bid to be back on May 12th, so later this month, hopefully on the 17th, we should be ready to award contracts and set up a budget for that. You'll recall we purchased a new street sweeper that went into service today. I saw it going on the street as I walked to work today, which is a nice sight to see. Our water treatment plant improvements project, you'll recall we were awarded a $3 million VIA grant recently. We had also submitted requests for additional funding to both former Congressman Delgado and Senator Schumer. We were listed on one of 15 projects on Delgado's list to be considered for community project funding. So that might be, I just want $3.12 million that we will hear about sometime in the future. So if you were to receive that and reduce the amount that we need to borrow for And the last update tonight is just Chief Witzenberg will be attending or meeting with both SUNY and Hartwick criminal justice programs later this week to talk about potential careers in OPD. Hopefully this will lead into getting some good candidates from those colleges to sit for our civil service exam this September.
Okay, very good. Any questions, comments for Greg? Good. Well, we're going to do my report this week. I have pushed it off a couple of weeks. I want to start first by saying to all the educators and folks that work in education, happy Teachers Day. Happy Teachers Week, it's actually. And I want to also congratulate our Congressman Antonio Delgado for his appointment as Lieutenant Governor for the state of New York. Congressman Delgado has been an advocate for Oneonta, as you all know, for small businesses and entrepreneurs, for farmers and high tech, and for the enhancement of everyone's quality of life in his district, in our district. And he's gotten things done in Congress without fanfare and as a model of bipartisan collaboration. There's so much success to be had when you're collaborative. When you see the value of a team in successfully tackling problems and finding new avenues to assistance of those in need, that, as you know, is my mindset here as well. On the day I announced my run for this office, I entered into a compact with you, with those around this room and those at home. I promised that I would look for ways to strengthen the community's relationship with the city government so that it becomes your best resource, partners with and supporters of all of you. Through more inclusion, by bringing voices to the conversation not typically heard, by finding new ways to address problems, and by empowering your ability to make a difference in your own neighborhoods and the lives of those around you. And I promised to find a means of funding you to do the things that you belong to do. Things that will enhance, entertain, and otherwise benefit the community. So that was the goal. However, as it turns out, my vision on how to get there proved to be unworkable. Despite that, Jane Lee, Judy Pangman jumped into this and found a way. They renamed this thing the Oneonta Community Initiative, OCI. And after exploring several avenues that wound up as dead ends, as it turns out, they figured out a way to make my initiative a reality. With some shepherding by Greg Mattice and the willingness of Destination Oneonta to assist, we have the plan and a contract in hand. And the council will vote on it tonight. This is no doubt a unique program, not something you'll see replicated most places. I owe a debt of gratitude to Judy and Ginny for being so tenacious in your pursuit of a way to make this happen. Thank you, guys. It's going to be amazing. And I think you're going to love it. If you have a project that you and your friends have been talking about, something that will make life a little bit better for folks, you'll be able to apply for funding, not for labor, but funding for projects and events and neighborhood enhancements, funding for any qualifying project from $200 to $1,000. As much as $5,000 will be given out every quarter. And every month, as many as 4 different new projects will be funded. We're going to appoint a committee of 5 local folks who will review the applications and provide their choices to Destination Oneonta every month. And we'll be sharing the photos and the videos and other documentation of all of those projects with all of you. And with the folks who will be asking to join us as new neighbors in our community. So watch for our marketing campaign, right? Quality of life. It's already pretty great here, but it's about to get even better. Thank you. And with that, we move on to the agenda. And we start with the approval of the minutes. Motion 1, that the common council approves the minutes of the regular meeting held April 26, 2022. And motion number 2, the approval of the warrants, that the common council approves the warrants totaling $562,481.78, and that the same be placed on the Director of Finance's desk for payment as presented. From Finance and Human Resources, motion that the common council authorizes the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Oneonta Family YMCA to provide summer recreation aquatics services for costs up to $77,500, with the option to amend the contract for extended services, and further authorizes a waiver from provisions of the city's purchasing policies and procedures manual relative to professional services. This agreement is subject to the approval of the city attorney. Motion number 4, that the common council authorizes the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Oneonta Family YMCA to provide services for the summer morning adventure program in the amount of up to $32,000, and further authorizes the waiver from the provisions of the city's purchasing policies and procedures manual relative to professional services. This agreement is subject to the approval of the city attorney. Motion number 5, that the common council authorizes the mayor to amend the agreement with the county of Otsego, whereby the city provides transit services for the operation of Otsego Express Route number 6, which is Sydney. The amendment will authorize Otsego County to subsidize all fares for a period of 6 months with a target starting date of May 2nd, 2022, ensuring that the city will retain 100% of the fares and applied accordingly to the formula pursuant to the agreement. Motion number 6, that the common council approves the purchasing agent's recommendation to award the bids for the 2022 materials and supplies per the attached report titled Materials and Supplies 2022 Summary of Bids, detailing the item and the bidder as presented, effective for 1 year, beginning May 21st, 2022. Motion number 7, that the common council approves the budget transfers totaling $101,735 as presented in the attached reports. Number 8, that the common council approves the Oneonta Community Initiative, OCI, program guidelines as presented, recognizing that the purpose of the OCI program is to provide funding of events, projects, and public services that have a public benefit for the Oneonta community. And those projects must be consistent with the comprehensive plan. This program will be funded by Community Development Program income released by New York State as miscellaneous revenues. The council further authorizes any necessary budget transfers or amendments. Number 9, the council authorizes the mayor to execute a contract amendment with the Destination Oneonta to manage the Oneonta Community Initiative, OCI, program based on the OCI program guidelines at an annual cost of $5,000 to be paid quarterly with an automatic renewal in 1-year increments for up to a total of 5 years, contingent upon available funding. The council further authorizes any necessary budget transfers or amendments. And that concludes the consent agenda. Do we have any that need to be removed? Mark Davies?
Number 8, number 9, please.
Number 8 and number 9. And do we have any others? Dave? Number 4. Number 4. Any others to be removed? Right. Do we have a motion to approve those that are here, followed by Emily? And with that, we'll vote on what we have here.
Councilmember Brennan?
Aye.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitmer?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFarge? Aye. Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Raptor?
Yes.
Councilmember Felton?
Wonderful. I'm going to take these in numerical order. So motion number 4, the motion with the Oneonta Family YMCA providing those services. Dave, I think that was you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion.
Do I have, yes, thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve? Yes, motion and then seconded by Emily. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And now,
Yeah, my question was, what are the hours for that program? Like how many hours in the morning does it run? And what's the time frame on it?
Who do we have that might have that information?
Like we did discuss that at finance, so. let's see. 8:30 to 11:30. With a bridge to a free lunch program operating 11:30 to noon. Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 11:30.
How many weeks?
6 weeks. July 11th, 2019.
I got a copy right here.
No, that's okay. I just need, I wanted the information on this. That's all.
It's just the people with computers can beat me.
We got the search option, so.
What we got here?
Good, thank you.
Any other discussion on that motion? Right, in that case,
Councilmember
Aye.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
Councilmember Clayton,
Aye.
Councilmember Carson,
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Raptor.
Yes.
Councilmember Falcon.
all right, we move to motion number 8. Go ahead and motion to approve. Scott and Emily, I just be looking in that direction. I'm here in a minute. And so who will this, is it Mark Davis?
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess I'm just, I don't know if we asked these questions first, so I'll pose them in general. As I recall, late last year, we had a proposal that came from city staff that was about cool grants. And we, at that point, the council decided to take that money and put it back into the general fund, if I'm recalling correctly. At that time, I recall I was the only person that supported that particular grant. I think I voted not to table, if I recall. So I'm just curious, why now and how is this different? I do have a few questions, but that's the first one. I don't know if that's aimed towards you, Mayor, or who that should be aimed toward.
I can start it and then defer to folks that can talk more specifically about the funding mechanism on this. At the time that we voted on that in November, we were looking at, it's all part of the budget. I knew that this was, it had a different name at the time, but this was fundamentally the initiative that I was looking to bring to my mayoralty as an initial initiative. And the funding piece really was the mechanism that, again, my thanks to Judy and Ginny for being able to figure out how to make this work. But there's a different funding mechanism for this, and Ginny, let me let you talk to that first.
Yes, when we were proposing the cool grant, they decided during budget time to use that towards the general fund budget. On top of those funds, we have additional funds that were released by New York State for program income. Once there's a level of 35,000, and if we don't go over the 35,000 mark, New York State will release those funds for us, and they become miscellaneous revenues. We have about $53,000 of total in that source. They have been released, and we'll be able to use them towards this. But we're going to stretch it out. So this year we'll only use, approximately 5,000 a quarter. So it'll be about 15,000 this year.
Thank you. So my next question is, as I recall, the cool grants had a little bit more of an open amount. So making it perhaps there could be some bigger impact projects. $10,000 grant might have a bigger impact on the city than a $200 grant. So I'm curious as to why we capped it at 1,000 and what the logic is behind that. My thinking.
But I think I can answer that.
My thinking is a larger, grant might allow for bigger, opportunities.
So I think I can answer that. So the idea here is that folks in the community that have been looking, I've talked to so many, who've been looking to do small projects that are either temporal or permanent, that have an impact on the community, on the neighborhood, and the enjoyment of their quality of life, are hamstrung even by small dollar amounts, couple $100 is prohibited. What we want to do is we want, as we have this laid out, we'll have as many as 16 different projects. Is that? No, it's more than that. It's 4 per month, so it's 48 different projects potentially over the course of a year. With the entry of a couple $100 to a maximum of $1,000, that will allow a lot of creative usage by a much wider number of people. One of the things that I want to do in my 4 years here is to engage as many community members as is possible in addressing the upgrade of quality of life in their own neighborhoods. And so rather than this being something more specific to a business doing something huge, that $10,000 might make a huge difference too, more to the point for both my intention of engaging as many people as possible, but also for the potential of our being able to market our quality of life, which in many people's estimation is our greatest asset, by in fact doubling down on that through a lot of projects that are moving concurrently through the ether, essentially, that we're able to then be promoting in a continuous stream of assets to those who we're looking to market to. And then thirdly, we want to be engaging so many community members in a way that they can say, I had a hand in that. I helped make that happen. I helped make that happen. And so we're encouraging a greater level of community spirit, which will allow us to be able to then reach into that very same community for assistances around so many things that, as you know, we have taken on as tasks through various boards and committees and commissions. So engaging as much of the population as possible in a way that will provide the greatest number of different, unique, events and productions. For me, that was the purpose of this, and again, somehow or another, Judy and Jimmy were able to figure out how to make that happen.
So on that point, is there a plan for funds that are not, let's just say that the level of engagement is not as we might hope? Is there a plan for those funds, how they would be distributed and utilized if they are not tapped into, say, on a quarterly basis?
I don't believe at this point we've crossed that bridge. I think we're anecdotally, I can say that there is a lot of enthusiasm in the community about this. We've been working on it for 4 months and several days. So it's not been something that we've been able to get out and promote. The council will vote on it tonight. But with that, the expectation is that we will be promoting this.
Well, first we need to vote on it.
That's correct.
So the other question then is that you talked about kind of more community-based projects, but yet it's the language talks about consistency with a comprehensive plan. How do we align a community project and make sure that's consistent with comprehensive plan in theory and practice? And then I want to get into the group that will be making that decision, so you might want to address that at the same time.
I'm not going to address the group right now, but let me move that, if you don't mind, to Judy or I think most likely Judy to address.
Well, we had a couple of activities that we had to make sure that it fit under, so that the use of funding is appropriate. So, and all of the items that we picked, all of the categories, and Jeannie actually went through and picked these: arts, culture, and recreation, community development, public service. They're all part of our comprehensive plan in one way or another. So as long as they meet the requirements in the guidance document, they'll meet the goals and comprehensive goals.
So specifically, I mean, I recognize arts, culture, recreation, specifically some of those particular areas. Are you saying there's kind of bullet points there?
Yep.
Okay. And then this particular committee, yes, I'm just a little uncomfortable with it kind of moving outside the range of the council, but we're using taxpayer dollars and we're going to have a committee of people that are going to be allocating these funds or deciding allocation of these funds. So how is this committee going to be formed? What is the basis on which they'll be making this judgment? I mean, I want to understand more what the thinking process will be. I guess my concern is that there could be
Sure. Well, Judy, I'm gonna let Judy answer it first, and then if there's any questions beyond that, I'll.
Okay, so we base that concept on our current grants that the city gives. So for instance, the micro enterprise program, we're on our 7th one. All of the award decisions are made by a project selection committee that is made up of residents and business people in the city. There's no one on council on that. And the reason is because that needs to be a non-political selection. And like right now, our current committees consist of business owners that have received a micro enterprise grant or a similar type of grant from us in the past. So we want to make sure that the decisions are made by people that are aware of what the program is, aware of what the city goals are. And also so that nobody can point to any particular council member and say, oh, you know, I'm friends with them, that's why I got the grant. So we try to keep it very neutral, but also very thoughtful in making those selections.
Does that answer your question? Jenny?
Can I add something?
Of course.
Also, just so you're aware, the application itself is set up with points and how the points will be awarded by the different categories in the guidelines itself. So does it have a community benefit? Does it meet one of the comprehensive goals? You know, and so there's a series of questions that the committee will have to go down and review to see if it meets the guidelines of the program. So where the council's got the control is in the guidelines of the program. And then it's up to the committee to make sure that those guidelines are followed. And also, it's also destinations on our responsibility to make sure that when they vet the applications, that they meet the guidelines of the program.
So deal with the initial, that won't take place here in-house, that we deal with that complete process and allocate the funds once that has been decided.
Yeah, so what will happen, the applications will go into DO. DO will make sure that all the proper information according to the guidelines is with the application. Then that goes to the committee. Once the committee makes the selections, it goes back to DO to administer.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all my questions, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Any other questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Dave.
Yes, I like this program in spirit, but I have some concerns as well. One is applicants must be one of the following: business owners, not nonprofits or residents of the city of Oneonta. Is DO a not-for-profit?
Yes.
Is there anything that says they can or cannot apply for this money? I don't see anything in the guidelines.
No, I guess we could add that they can't.
The other thing is business owners can apply. Business owners on Main Street currently don't have their own business improvement district. They refuse to form one. So this looks to me like it's something that could be replacing them developing their own bid. And under eligible uses of funds are improvements of city-owned properties. I mean, what does this mean? Does this mean the city could apply for this money?
No.
Or does this mean a resident can then take the money and do something on city-owned property?
Yeah, like a little garden or something like that. And what they want to do would be vetted to make sure that.
But there's nothing in here that says it would be vetted by the council, city-owned
Right.
property. I don't think we
They
should have,
have to get appropriate permits, and that is in there. So they would, if they're doing something on city property, they would need to be permitted. They would need waivers for labor, you know, on city property and things like that. It's all in there. So they have to get the proper permits, and that's where you would have a say.
well,
or
what
the
I,
city would.
what I like about the program is that, as I said, in spirit, I think what we were trying to do here is Oneonta needs a big picture impact with something like this. I don't believe this is big impact when we're talking about quilting supplies for the warming station, or gardening supplies to plant flowers in different places, or woodworking supplies. Although I like the having a class for the youth to build birdhouses, I don't think these are big impact. I would rather take this $25,000 and have a bigger impact that can have an impact throughout the entire city. I mean, we're talking about having parks improvements, downtown improvements, public art. That we say that we're an artist community, but we have very little public art. We're talking about having a spray park. That you're talking $1 million for that, but these are big impact ideas. I think this is little impact, to be honest. And as it's written right now, I mean, I appreciate the work that's been done by our staff, but as it's written right now, I will not be voting for this.
Let me, so let me just jump in on a couple of points, if I could. This isn't designed to be big impact. You're 100% right. This is designed to be little impact. It's designed to be continuous impact. It's designed to be impacted by people who are in the community, who have had thoughts, ideas, aspirations of things that they want to do within the context of their community, whether it's physical community, the arts community, whatever it may be, and haven't been able to find an avenue to be able to produce, whether it's an event or a physical, physical project. And this will allow them to do that. It will also allow us to be able to market as an asset, as we are, in terms of a big thing that we can do. A big thing that we can do is talk about how our quality of life is something that is has the investment of every one of our 13,700 people in the city in one fashion or another, that we are all working together to enhance our quality of life in small ways and in big ways. There will be opportunities to do big, splashy things, I'm certain of that. But right now, we are addressing something that we have never had before, to my mind. So it does reflect very much on the on what a lot of us found attractive of the pool grant, in that we are empowering to some degree the community. And to the degree that we're looking at $200 on the low end and $1,000 on the high end, with it being vetted, with it being connective to all the regulations of the city via permits and every other fashion before it's even something that bears consideration by Destination Oneonta, then Destination Oneonta having been determined that these applications are fully formed and the content is up to snuff. Those then are presented to a committee, as Judy explained the rationale for the committee, and then these things are then an ongoing opportunity for our community to become increasingly invested in the quality of life of Oneonta. So is it a big thing? I would argue it's a big thing, but it's a big thing made of little things.
I think we say Luke's done.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I really like the idea behind this. And I don't want to stifle conversation on this at all either. But I would think, maybe to reconcile kind of this big picture, smaller picture, council might consider tabling this motion. So we have a chance to perhaps better reconcile these images. It'd be great to have the entirety of the council on board Just my thoughts. Again, I thought it was gonna be the last one. I hope this doesn't feel like I'm shutting you down, Scott, so.
Are you making?
You didn't make a motion, if you're gonna make a motion, then yeah, it would stop. If you didn't-
Never mind, I'm not making that motion, just.
You're not
discussion.
making that
No.
Okay.
In that case, Scott?
I saw Dave's eyebrow raise up over there.
I only live to serve.
Scott?
I think we're close. I think we got a lot of good things going with this. I do share some hesitance, with it. One of my concerns and when Dio did a presentation last time, and I asked about from Dio, what do you do for the rest of the city other than, we know what you do downtown? They didn't really have a concrete answer. I'm very worried that this could all just funnel to, I'm not saying downtown doesn't deserve it, but we also have more than downtown. We have a city consisting of 8 wards. And we gotta make sure that 8 wards benefit from what we're doing, because everybody's putting in. These are just some of my concerns about having DO be the primary right now. So, I would say maybe put this back down to committee, but I'm gonna kind of go with like Luke said. And I'm actually gonna make the motion that we table this for now.
Could we?
I made a motion, so it's,
All right, do we have a second on that motion? You're gonna second that motion? Then I'll just smoke it up. You're gonna second that motion. Fine, in that case, the clerk will call.
Councilmember Murphy,
Aye.
Councilmember Davies,
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger,
No.
Well,
No, not sorry, no.
no, thank you. Councilmember LaCartine? No. Councilmember Carson?
This is to table it, correct?
Yes.
No.
Councilmember Harrington?
yes.
Councilmember Rathner?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
It doesn't matter.
I don't think we should table it. I think it's a wonderful opportunity and for our community.
You have a title.
So a tie goes to the runner.
No, actually, it kind of goes to the mayor.
Well, the mayor is not inclined to update this.
In that case, vote.
We don't have to vote immediately, right? Continue discussion?
But this is a motion table.
Right, oh, okay.
Once the motion is tabled, if the motion table is approved, then it's tabled. If the motion to deny, if the motion to table is not approved, then it's continued and voted on.
But can we have discussion before we vote or no?
Yes. You have to get the.
So we can continue our discussion.
That's what I wanted to know, because I had some questions.
Yes, in that, you now continue the debate
Gotcha.
Can I,
until somebody calls the question.
so Scott brought a couple of things up, and I just want to quickly address those, because I know there's a lot of moving parts here. So there are 8 wards. The value of this, as I see it, as no, the value of this, as I see it, is that in fact it's inclusive of 8 wards. That there are so many things that happen in our neighborhoods that this will enhance the capabilities of people in the neighborhoods to engage with their friends and their neighbors to make things better. The Destination Oneonta piece, Destination Oneonta is not a decision. Destination Oneonta is simply making certain that the applications, all the Ts are crossed, all the Is are dotted. That then goes to a committee. I can tell you, I won't tell you who I'm considering for the committee, but they will be representative of the city as a whole and not a downtown centric sort of a mindset. So Destination Oneonta is not making decisions. On the other hand, this, from my perspective, is a wonderful way for Destination Oneonta to be assisting the city in a way that we found very few others that were positioned to be able to provide that assistance. And for Destination Oneonta, who sees a little bit of money out of this, that's a win-win. John?
No.
Okay, other Yes, Kate.
So I know that due diligence has been done on this over and over for months on end, and I'm just asking this question for my understanding, to really thoroughly understand how it will be funded, just because the way that the motion, sort of to Mark's question earlier, Mark Davies, about any unused portion of the funds, does that roll over? Because I know sort of the way that the motion is worded, I was trying to piece this together myself based on the two motions. So the contract with DO is for 5 years, as long as we have funding. So I guess, yeah, and then it's from the miscellaneous revenues. So how much is in the miscellaneous revenues? Does money get continually added to that? Can we spread it out over those 5 years? If money is not utilized, does it keep rolling over? Do we continue, on with this? Like, how is it long-term? Yeah, you're picking up what I'm putting down, so I'll just let me talk. Thank you.
Currently, we have about $53,000 that's available to fund this program.
Okay.
And for this year, we've only got about 3/4 left, so it would only be 3/4 worth of grants, depending on the applications, up to $5,000 per quarter. So we've got enough money to extend this program for at least 2 years. And then if the funds run out, then the program would be done. Or if we find more program income that gets released by New York State, we would be bringing it to you through the budget process to readapt the program again for the next year. So this would come up for discussion. It won't be automatic because we would need council approval to adopt the budget to expend those funds.
Okay, so we could use this to do a lot of little cool things for the next 2 years.
Yeah, for right now, you've got about enough money for about a 2-year program.
Gotcha.
Judy, were you trying?
Yeah, I just wanted to just explain the program income. That comes from our old loan programs, repayments. So like Ginny said earlier, if that amount, there's a threshold that the state sets every year. So if people repay us more than $35,000 in a year, we have to give it back to the state. But if it's under $35,000 a year, they allow us to keep it. And so we never know every year until the end of March if we're gonna have that money or not.
Okay,
So, yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, but when we get it, then it can be used for this.
This couch cushion.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna ask about the difference in, this is different from like the HUD funding from the cool grant, correct?
We were going to use it's basically the same source, but it was, we were looking at it for a bigger program with the cool grant.
Okay.
And then when we got into this, when you look at the bigger programs, there's a lot of different federal regulations that you have to meet. But putting this on a smaller scale, what we ended up doing was consulting with about 4 different agencies. We talked to HUD in Buffalo, we talked to our auditors, we talked to the New York State up in Albany, the Office of Community Renewal, to get their guidelines. We also talked to our representatives from the state. All of them really liked the program, but had also cautioned us about the different regulations that we had to meet. And they said the best way to approach the program was to bid it out. Well, we already did bid out an event program through Destination Oneonta. So we were able to easily, because we've already gone through that bidding process to hold events for the city of Oneonta, we could just amend their contract. Because what you have to do is you have to make sure that it meets the city function, and by having the city function already built into the Destination Oneonta contract, we were already meeting that obligation. And then that way we were able to, and that is why these are not grants to people. What they are is to fund different events or activities or programs that will benefit the community as a whole. So planting flowers, that could be a community beautification. Having events to teach people how to build birdhouses or how to make, supply things for the warming station. Or it's got to meet one of our comprehensive plan goals, even though it will be on a small scale. Now, I will share with you that Judy and I and Greg are in conversations to do maybe bigger events with, our new sources of released revenues, such as, a bigger event that could benefit the Oneonta, but we're not ready to bring that forward. So I wanted to answer your question as far as, on a bigger scale. We are discussing that, but we're not ready to bring it forward yet.
But it could be done through DO also
Yes.
as an amendment to their contract.
So,
We would just have to have a funding source for it.
So all of the people that we talked to about developing this program, we followed their guidelines to make sure that we were meeting all of the criteria that they wanted met. So when it did become, an auditor's eye or compliance or regulations, we made sure that we connected all the dots.
I'd like to just add, if I could, if the city had done this ourselves and not put it through DO, we have to meet, this money ultimately it came from HUD, a national funding program. And we would have had to meet a national objective, which means we have to benefit low to moderate income people with this money. Is one way you meet that. It used to be, when I first started here, up until about 2 years ago, our overall low to moderate income percentage for the entire city was over 51%. And having that 51%, we were at like 52.3 at the time. Having that meant that any project that we did in the city met the low to moderate income benefit. Now we're at 50.93. They don't round up. So frustrating. But because of that, we would have had to make sure like the woodworking event would have had to be directed towards low to moderate income children or low to moderate income seniors. And whoever was doing that program would have had to document that officially and formally, or it would have had to go through a nonprofit that already is documenting those types of things. So it just became a really difficult thing to deal with. And so then we started thinking about, okay, how do we do this where it's not directly, payments going from the city directly out, and the DO was a perfect solution to it. So we really don't have too many other options if we don't use DO to administer the program. It's a perfect fit for what we're trying to do.
Also, the amount of work and effort it's going to take to go through the applications and also to follow through on the project to make sure that everything is documented correctly and do the reimbursements. That's a tremendous amount of work, and we just don't have the city staff to do it. So again, DO is the perfect fit to make this program work. So, so we, Greg and I and Judy and the mayor, we just sat and discussed many different options, researched all the regulations that we had to follow. As I said, we talked to several advisors, had Zoom meetings, had conference calls, just trying to make sure that we were doing everything legally and properly. And I will tell you that OCR and Albany was really excited to hear about this program, thinking that was a great way to recycle the CD payments that got released, because they like the whole idea about the recycling the money again through the community.
Mark? Yeah, sorry, just ask a follow-up question, just because I think something you said kind of piqued my interest, to make sure I've got this really clear. You use much better language and precise language than I do, but basically, as I understand it, so the threshold of $1,000 is that threshold because of the requirements of that. So
No, that was really the mayor's preference as far as going from 200 to 1,000, and just so we could benefit more people and not use up the funds as fast.
Thanks. Any other questions? Yes. Please.
I would just say, I think it's cool to get this funding into the hands of the community, directly. I agree with what Scott said, that, we really want this to be sure that it benefits the entire city. And, I think it's great to hear that we sort of have like a 2-year cap on this, and at that time, we can sort of reevaluate, make sure that it's doing what we want it to be. Yeah, so I just think those things have been sort of satisfactory.
Very good, Mark, David.
I'm sorry, I'm just,
No, you're fine.
speaking lots of questions, so follow-up question to what Julie's saying. Yeah, following up a lot, but is there a process through which we're gonna evaluate this
Yes.
at the end of this?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm sorry, let me let,
We will see how many applications we actually get. We will see, how many awards are made, and we'll bring that information to you. It will be part of. Yeah, I was gonna say, it's gonna be part of Destination Orlando's report to the council. It'll be in a quarterly report. You will know how many applications were made, how many awards were made, how many projects got completed. Then also, all of the marketing of the projects will be given to the city for marketing resources.
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're fine, you're fine.
Hopefully the last follow-up. So given that, and that's helpful information, would there be an opportunity if we were concerned about different aspects of the grant to tweak it in some way? Are we committed to this once we pass this?
We can modify the program guidelines whenever the council wishes to.
Isn't it the contract?
Well, just to clarify, the council could opt to not fund this program beyond the first quarter. If the first quarter, the first round doesn't go the way everyone expects it to or wants it to. We're not committing to 2 years. We have up to at least that much of funding available. We could extend this for 2 years, but you could operate that.
And if tell me if I'm wrong, but our contract with Destination Oneonta would not be very much impacted if we were to tweak within the context of the application and disbursement piece.
So we could change our criteria or whatever. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think once we get some applications or they do, I think there may be some tweaks needed. You always find out, like, oh boy, because people come up with all kinds of things, so, yeah, I would expect that we'd have some tweaking going on.
And again, not to lose this third point of this, which is that we are just now becoming engaged in a marketing effort where, we saw flight path being presented here, our connection to alumni and potentially graduating seniors at both schools, and in other fashion, trying to engage people who have their jobs, hopefully something they can bring with them. So this is a market that a lot of people are, we're not alone. There's a lot of competition for this market. A lot of people would agree that Oneonta's greatest asset is its quality of life. And so if you are looking to promote yourself as being a place to come for quality of life, one of the things that you do is look at how can you enhance those assets. And what we wind up doing is we will wind up through documentation, because every single one of these projects will be documented with photographs, with video, with narrative, and we will be able to use those as assets, which are invaluable, frankly, in an ongoing campaign for recruitment of new residents and entrepreneurs and businesses. So it has that effect as well. It's obviously for the community, but there is a whole another value to this as well. And the more that we can say that, whether it's Shakespeare in the Park or somebody building birdhouses or whatever it may be, these things are things that are happening because the city has provided some support for that through Destination Oneonta to happen. All of those things wind up being additional assets for us to be able to market.
I just want to follow up on a couple of things. I'm not saying DO is not the appropriate thing. I don't want that to be taken out of context where I'm hung up on. I mean, one of the things is we give them roughly $65,000 a year for the city of Oneonta right now. Then we're going to be giving them up to another $25,000 by the end of the year. Because it's quarter, we're doing quarters.
No,
That's not their money.
yeah, it's not going to.
They're good.
That's the grant money.
In any case, the number is wrong. The number is that they would get for the full year, and right now we're looking at 3/4 of a year. They would get over the course of the full year $5,000, would we anticipate
It's $5,000 for the.
for the full 12 months?
Oh, okay, I misunderstood, that's why I was like, we're giving her, okay.
And their expectation, our expectation is to not be tasking our staff here at the city beyond the work that you've already done. Again, thank you very much, guys. And Destination Oneonta will need to pull together these applications, make sure that they are fully and completely, presented before they then forward them on to a committee for decisions to be made. And then there is a reporting piece that is Destination Oneonta as well. So they're likely to be looking at 3, 4, 5, who knows how many hours per application, which is why we're looking at a maximum of 4 per month, so that we don't overtask them for the amount of monies that we're paying them.
So I just want to make sure I get this right, because somehow I got myself all probably confused, but so say I submit an application. I submit that to DO, who then gives it to the committee, or they vet the application first to make sure it meets all criteria. Then they give it to the committee, and then the committee goes through it and then gives it, says, yes, we're gonna do this one, then gives it to DO, and then DO sends them out.
DO will take it from that, that's correct. And it's not a guarantee that every application that makes its way through Destination Oneonta to this committee, because in fact, they're looking at a maximum of 4 per month. Some of these things may be timeframe that have more flexibility and get pushed back. Others may be a priority, but they aren't. Nonetheless, they do that. So that's going to be a difficult decision for 5 people. But
I guess I was getting confused, that's why.
are you clear?
Yeah, I think so, thanks.
Any other questions?
The only reason I bring this up is because it's been brought up in the past. Is there anything in here that says this money cannot be used for block parties?
We have already made it clear to Destination Oneonta that it cannot be made used for block parties. So, but it doesn't specifically, I don't think we specifically said block parties ineligible. No.
But this 5-member committee can be informed of that fact.
Yeah.
This week.
Can I ask why?
Block parties are that it's too narrow as far as benefiting the community as a whole. And it is not really a city service. For example, the city would plant flowers, but they would not put on a block party. So, so that's what, and also block parties are not in our comprehensive plan. So we're trying to make all the connections there. Now, if you have,
exclusive to
yeah.
block parties to over a block. It's nothing for that citywide one.
Now, in our meeting, I did have the discussion that if you wanted to have an event where you were touring historic buildings and going through the different neighborhoods doing that, that could be an event. If you were, going through bike trails, so the people could learn where the bike trails were, or the hiking trails, and you needed to, fund the person who was going to do the escorting or whatever. Those type of things where it's expanding the services that the city, or the events or the recreation that the city already has. Block parties would not.
Any other questions? Yes, John.
What's your sense of how this would be reviewed by council in terms of, here's the process starting, and how would we be informed about it and what the monies are? Because it was mentioned how long this sustained, and the city manager or city administrator was saying this could be for 2 months, and we say this is crazy.
Well, Destination Oneonta will give you a quarterly report on the activities, on how many applications came in, how many were awarded, how many projects were completed, and as Greg, very brilliantly suggested, you could put a timeline on this if you wanted to do the program for 3 quarters to see how it worked out, or if you wanted to limit it to 1 full year to see how it worked out. The council's got that ability to do that.
My thought is that once it gets started, every event would be something to be examined and receive feedback in terms of its appropriateness, so that the next decisions or the next events could be informed by how it's going so far. And the question gets to be, how would that be reported to council on a regular basis, or how would we?
Yeah, right, quarterly. And beyond that, because this is going to be a regular stream of assets for marketing, this is going to be something that we will, while it's a quarterly report, there'll be an ongoing and constantly changing set of basic information about our successes, our failures, our
Sure.
either attendance or lack of attendance, whatever it may be.
So there'd be criteria put in place to evaluate the impact of any of these expenditures.
I think the criteria is not necessarily in place within the context of our contract, but the review of this by council would, I think the council would, within the context of their conversation, your conversation, you will make the determinant decisions as to whether or not this is effective, if it's popular, if it's something that the marketing committee within the context of economic development is finding useful, if it's gaining traction, and all of that should be something that almost in real time we should be able to share with the council.
Mark, I got one more question. Jenny, so you're saying there's funds right now to fund this for 2 years?
For 2 years, correct.
Okay. And so let's say
You're not funding it for 2 years. It's that if you have up to that amount before the money runs out.
Yeah. Correct. So if we're getting quarterly reports, and let's say we see the projects are not exactly what the council wants. So am I correct that what we could do is simply not fund the program any further?
Correct, you could
And
just.
we would not be in violation of the contract.
Correct, you could pass a motion, and David, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you could pass a motion that says that you want to terminate the program and that you want to terminate the contract with the amended contract with Destination Untitled. Correct?
I definitely contract, I still want to look at it. But again, you can only operate if it's funded.
Correct.
You could also change the guidance if you wanted to, so if you wanted to continue it with different rules, you could do that as well.
Basically, just pull the funding. If you don't like it the way it's going, you just pull the funding.
Right. We'll modify the expectations of the application.
And tonight you could even modify the motion, to say that you only want to fund up to $15,000 or, whatever, your.
Any other, yes, Emily?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. I'm wondering, because there are going to be quarterly reports from Destination Oneonta, is it that the timeline and deadline for these projects will occur then within a quarter? Or can they be like ongoing and that will kind of be part of the report?
The expectation, I think reasonable expectation is that there'll be projects that will be unfinished as a report is made, and then on the next report, those will be finished, and then maybe others.
I see, so it's kind of like a rolling thing. Okay, that makes more sense to me. I just kind of want to make sure. And then as far as the committee that makes a decision on the applications, is that something that council votes on, those people that are part of that committee, or is it just strictly appointed by the mayor?
Yeah, no, it's these are my appointments, but they need to be, they're
Okay.
subject to the council's approval.
Okay, thank you.
Mark? We missed you.
This is absolutely the last one. I appreciate both of you answering questions here. It's been really helpful for me. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for the time that you've invested in this, which was clearly a lot in terms of all the thinking. So appreciate the clarification. My apologies for all my questions, but I was just trying to understand this in context of the last one that we've been looking at and how this and the news is there. So thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. No need to apologize.
Okay, because Emily asked a question that I thought earlier was answered a different way. So if you're appointing the 5 members on the committee, so that those members come through, those names come through council for approval to be on the committee, is what,
Would they not always?
because I thought it was said earlier that did not happen.
We didn't for the micro enterprise program.
Oh,
That committee is not through council, the mayor
Yeah,
just
I-
appointed them.
yeah.
And that can change sometimes, you
Right.
know.
I have no issue with having the council approve that I present for this committee.
I would feel a lot more comfortable if we gave the thumbs up or thumbs down to who's on the committee.
I don't know.
So,
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a nice way for us to be engaged for this committee.
Sure. Yeah, no problem with that.
Could I follow up on Emily's question about the timing of the grant? I'm just reading it right out of the guidance. So the applications are processed on a quarterly basis. The application deadline is on the 15th of January, April, July, and October. And the applications must be submitted at least 60 days prior to the event project date. So the plan is to keep those events moving, like, you know, there won't be a 6-month delay before the event goes on. We're trying to keep it as tight to the quarter as possible. And we're trying to keep DO's administrative work as tight as possible too, because this could become a real chore if they have to do 48 applications a year. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And they really have stepped up. I want, everyone to be aware of that destination Oneonta. Doesn't always, have the best press. They stepped up here. They helped us out. And I don't know that there was another option that presented itself outside of destination Oneonta. So, but for them, we wouldn't be able to do this. So we want to not complicate their lives, obviously. But certainly we're appreciative of the fact that they're able to do this.
Can I just say one more thing? Yeah, because I remember when I first came on council, I was particularly concerned about Destination Oneonta and like how they were kind of marketing businesses and marketing Oneonta in general. And like after now having talked to them and seeing how they want to kind of reframe their business model, for lack of a better word, and I think these little grants like can provide a really good opportunity for them to kind of get into some other communities that aren't just downtown focused, like, and I'm hoping that this will do that, and I think, like, I want to promote it. I think if we all promote it, the city's promoting it, that it is a nice opportunity to get into the other wards and showcase like the beautiful things that are happening there too.
Any other, I think Len had his hand raised.
Oh,
You're up.
Thank you, Scott. Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you to Ginny, Judy, and Greg for the amount of time that they've put into this proposal. It is a quality of life program. I thought that you folks have added quite a bit of value to our conversation tonight. I also wanted to say thank you to the council members that you guys have flushed through many of the finer details of this program, and several answers have been or several questions have been answered. And so I'm actually feel like I'm a little on the outside tonight because I guess I'm a few miles away, but I appreciate everybody's conversations tonight. I also appreciate the parameters that are being put in place, both financially and time constraints with the oversight. I think the friendly amendment to the motion of having the mayor make a selection for the committee and then the final approval through the council kind of gives us some say, along with the fact that we're going to have quarterly reports and we can, as a council, as a body, have further conversations. So for me, I think the questions that I had have been answered, and I want to thank the city staff and the council for getting those answered tonight. So for me, I'll be voting for this.
Do we have any other? All right, in that case, if the clerk will please call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy.
No.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger,
No.
Councilmember LaFarge,
Aye.
Councilmember Carson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Raptor,
Yes.
Councilmember Falcon.
Aye.
Well, that passed. That passed. So thank you. Yes. And that takes us to motion number 9. Do I have a motion to approve? And do I have a second? Emily? And Mark, you do this?
Yeah, but my questions were answered on previous discussion. It was obviously circled back on some of these, so I don't have any questions.
All right, very good. Any other questions, discussion? No? In that case, here's the roll.
Councilmember Murphy,
No.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger,
No.
Councilmember LaFarge,
Aye.
Councilmember Carson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Raptor,
Yes.
Councilmember Falcon.
Aye.
Terrific. Okay, when we move to we don't really actually have a motion for the public, the marketing and public arts funding, which puts me at a little bit of a loss. Do we just discuss this? Okay, so I'll take the lead on this.
Everybody's in the mood for hearty discussion.
Well, we'll see how this goes. So, once upon a,
Maybe going back on something, I noticed the word automatic annual renewal in what we just approved. Is that an appropriate thing to think could be an automatic renewal?
again, the
We have to
council,
interfere with that.
even though the council does have the ability to say
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
So moving to the discussion on number 10, which is marketing and public arts funding, there was a program called Survive and Thrive that was, funded through any number of different avenues, and Judy can talk about that. But point of it is that we wound up with some money that were targeted to the marketing of the city of Oneonta, specifically around the idea of the Thrive project, the Survive and Thrive. A couple of advertising agencies were pulled into a contract. We have, and this was honestly, it was an ad hoc committee, Survive and Thrive. So it was the marketing committee was kind of figured out by Barbara Ann Egan of the Chamber of Commerce at the time and some other folks, and they had some ideas around how we might move forward. We haven't much moved forward since then. I've become mayor and I have a marketing background, and we have folks that are kind of in sync with my thinking on where we want to go with our marketing, and our marketing can be done much more effectively and less expensively than the monies that we currently have still allocated for those contracts that are now essentially ended. So with those monies, and Judy, what's the total amount of money?
I don't have the exact amount
Right.
yet, but, for the ongoing marketing, we have 18,600 that was allocated through the city's funding.
Right.
And then, through the Department of State contract, the DRI contract with the Department of State for the branding and marketing, and, the other projects in there, we have somewhere upwards of 30. I don't have that number.
Right, so we're just approximately around $50,000, and what I suggested was that to Dave's point, there are a lot of things that we need to do. We talk about art as being something that we need to be investing in, and artists deserve to be paid, for their efforts. So we know that, and my experience tells me that we can market the city successfully over the course of these next year or two with about a third of that $50,000. And knowing that, I felt that there was a pretty good rationale that kind of syncs with Councilmember Risberger's thinking that we could provide those monies to the arts in the city. Now, it needs to be connected to the stipulations of the DRI, et cetera. It can't just be something that, is outside of that. So in essence, this is a one-off for the Arts Commission. This is not the Arts Commission funding that I know you're looking to pursue for the long run. However, it's not, it's real money.
This is not nothing.
It's not nothing.
It's great.
And so what I'd like to be able to do is say, rather than take the $50,000 that no one would argue, that the Survive and Thrive marketing, effort would be taking, we're not going to take that much. We think we can do as much frugally and be successful for about a third of that amount of money, and then take the other 2/3 of that and provide it to the Arts Commission so that they can do things within the context that Judy can be a little bit more specific about of a downtown kind of connection.
Okay, yeah, so, we don't have approval from DOS yet. They're checking, Dan Levin is now our rep with DOS, and he's checking with his supervisors on it. We should have an answer soon. But what I was thinking when I first came up with this was, if we're not gonna use all of the marketing funding, what else could we use that money for? So we have a couple options for the DOS contract. We could use it for construction, but $30,000 on the, so the DOS contract includes the new transit hub, the parking garage, the Water Street Boardwalk, and the Muller Plaza passageway. Those are the 4 projects plus the branding and marketing. So with those 4 projects, $30,000 plus or minus a little bit towards construction doesn't really have an impact, but it's like, public art, the Arts Commission has been really struggling to find some funding, and it seems like a good match for that. So we've asked DOS if we can, we already had verbal approval to use the money for our Survive and Thrive marketing. So we've asked DOS if we can change that to formal approval to use it for public art. So if we get that approval, then we would be able to use it for public art for any of those 4 projects. So it's a really great first step, I think, to get some money to the Arts Commission. And it's public art that would be in the downtown from Main Street back to Market Street in that area.
Okay. So you're saying the money can be used for, the marketing money can be used for construction?
Well, yeah, so if we didn't, let me back up. When we're in the Survive and Thrive mode, and I identified all these funding sources for small businesses and elsewhere, we tapped into some of our DRI funding. So we were short for the marketing piece. We had $18,600 of an $80,000 ask. And we had $18,600 that Ginny was able to find through program income funding. And so she's got that set aside for that. And then I went to Department of State, and we pulled out some remaining money that we have in the branding marketing line item over and above trampolines contract. That was 21. I have my scribbles here. That was 21. 4, I think it was. And then we also in that budget, so we have in the DOS contract budget, there's construction line items, which they actually include construction and design line items. And then there's separate line items for administration. So we had $40,000 that was targeted for the city costs for administration of the DOS. And during the Survive and Thrive emergency, we decided to use that $40,000 towards the branding and marketing. Towards the Survive and Thrive marketing effort. So between the 21.4 and the 40, we were able to come up with, and the 18.6 that the city already had, we were able to come up with an $80,000 ask. So we have spent some of that on a design firm that has developed some marketing assets, thank you, which we'll be able to use ongoing. So that's all set. The remaining that we have another consultant that has been hanging on with us all this time because they were going to help us with our website, but we're going in a different direction with our website. and a landing page for the marketing. So I have to talk to them. I'm not sure what their final invoice is gonna be when we stop their contract. So that's why I don't have a final number. But if I take out the design costs and whatever it costs from this other firm might be, we have roughly $30,000, maybe a little more than that. So the thought is to use the 18.6 so that we can do in-house marketing, basically, and then use the remaining balance that we have in the DOS contract for public art. If we didn't use it for the marketing and we didn't use it for public art, we could either use it for our own admin costs that would come back to the city, or we could add it to the construction line items for the 4 projects that are remaining to get done.
Okay, that was the reason why I was asking you that question, because it turns out it can't be used for public art. Most public art has some installation costs, which may fall under construction.
No, we would use that $30-some thousand for the total cost of the public art, including installation. So the public art would have to be done within that budget.
Okay, so if they say no to public art, you can't set that money aside for the installation of public art that's funded a different way.
No, it would have to go towards the, either towards our admin costs or towards the transit hub, parking garage renovations, or Muller Plaza or Water Street Boardwalk.
So I'm not certain that this goes back then to finance, or that we create a motion here to be able to move forward on it.
Well,
You can hear back from DOS first. So.
yeah,
So-
we need approval from DOS, and they're gonna let me know what type of amendment, if any, that we actually need on the budget line item. So at that point, then it would go back through, I guess, finance
Very good.
and then council.
But in the meantime, we've had an opportunity here
Or maybe
to
not,
more fully understand what this is.
yeah.
It may not be a council motion, really, if we have some concurrence that if we're able to spend some money on public art through these DRI projects, we'll include that. It doesn't require a budget amendment. It might be come back.
Yeah. And in the meantime, we're waiting on this information. So good, if there are no further questions on this or additional comments. So, good. So we're gonna move on to motion number 11.
I make the motion.
This is again, I'm sorry.
So I make the motion.
So yes, do I have a motion to approve?
Yes.
11, thank you, Scott and Luke over there. And so this motion, I'm going to read this motion because I hadn't yet. The Common Council authorizes the mayor to execute a memorandum of agreement dated May 3rd, 2022 with the CSEA Local 1000, ASME AFL-CIO City of Oneonta Unit 8101 to implement a pilot 4-day workweek program for certain city staff and to shorten the advanced notice requirement for schedule changes in certain circumstances. Additionally, the council rescinds prior authorization for the mayor to execute the memorandum of agreement with the CSEA dated April 26, 2022. So I kind of got ahead of myself, but we had a motion to approve, and then do we have discussion on this?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I can probably answer it. I think I know the question you're gonna ask.
No, I lost track at the for a second. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Does anybody have, Scott's got some information. Does anybody, Scott, you want to just talk about this?
Yeah, you're great, you can jump in, but this was originally, the union sent us back because they wanted us not. As
far as these facilities, not to touch out, but if we're around to talk about contract negotiations, we should do that.
Is there a need to do that? To have a conversation that pushes us to executive session on this? So does anybody have a question for Scott that, or anybody here, Greg, on this? Okay. All right, well then, if there's no further discussion, it seems like we're not going to push this to executive session, then.
Councilmember Murphy.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Carson?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Henry?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafford?
Yes.
Councilmember Falcon?
Hi.
All right, now we have on the supplemental agenda from Finance and Human Resources for discussion. Read it, the motion that the common council authorizes the mayor on behalf of the city as the owner and assigned payee of the Huntington Memorial Park land to sign the State of New York Master Contract Grant Agreement to the amount of $500,000 and the preservation covenant between New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation and the Huntington Memorial Library for the library's Huntington Park Enhancements Phase 2 to be executed in accordance to the contract's terms and conditions, subject to review by the city attorney. Do I have a motion to approve? Okay, so, all right, so with that, do we have, starting to get you in. Do we have any conversation, discussion of this? Luke?
It might just because of the hour, right? What does this mean exactly?
Can you address what this means?
Well, you want me to tell?
Oh, yes, yeah, please.
So what happened is that we are the title owner of Huntington Park, right? But we don't manage it. That's managed by the library board. It's operated by the library board. The library is also chartered, not by the city of Long Island, but by the education part, by the regions of the state of New York. So we're the unique, we've what is over the last decades called the two-headed cow. It's kind of a unique circumstance where we own the land, we don't control it. They're the city library, but we handle their money, but nothing else. It's just a very strange arrangement. So they're getting project funds to do the improvements and to see all the work that's being done in the park. However, they don't own it. We own it, even when they administer it. So as part of the grant, they have to get approval, consents, primary approval, and management of their money through the city of Long Island. So all you're doing is authorizing the mayor to sign on behalf of the city of Long Island as the owner of the property, that they can go ahead, that we're fully on board with their funding, and that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. All right, any other questions on this?
That's small words.
All right, so if there's no more discussion, then we'll take a vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
I've never been accused of that before, by the way.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Carson?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafford?
Yes.
Councilmember Falcon?
Hi.
Great, so we've got one last addition to our agenda, which say the motion that the common council increases the base annual salary for general supervisor Todd Cleveland to $65,000, administrative personnel manual salary schedule grade A2, effective May 4th. 2022. Do I have a motion to? And with that, we have any discussion? Luke?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Greg as well as Chris and Kate for working hard on this. Making sure that we're keeping folks that we can. So thank you all and for who aren't here for working on that. Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion? No. Very good. And did we go on this? No, we didn't. So if we can please call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Carson?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafford?
Yes.
Councilmember Falcon?
Hi.
All right. Well, that takes us through the agenda outside of additional business. Does anyone have any additional business to bring to the group? None. Council discussion of any topic?
Two quick things. I like the presentation earlier tonight, but as I said before, we need to have better communication with the council about economic development. I felt like over the last few months that it was a big secret being discussed. and none of us knew about it, and I didn't like what was being presented as we already knew it, because we didn't know this, including with Clarion. And now my second thing was, we had talked about having an executive session to discuss goals. And are we doing that tonight? Because we're already into May.
That's council's decision.
I would move, go into executive session.
All right, we have a motion to go into executive session. Do we have a second?
Second.
And do we need all in favor? Yes, we do.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaPartia?
Sure.
Councilmember Carson?
Same.
Councilmember Dyson?
We're moving into, I'm sorry.
Executive
Executive
session,
session.
discuss goals. No.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Felton?
Nothing personal, Rich, it's a.
But I think I wanted to have to vote.
Yes, sure. We're here.
All right, so.
I know, it's-
Yeah,
I'm gonna go use the restroom.
keep running.